Hello and welcome to our latest Gower Society Youth video. Today we're at Oxwich Natural Nature Reserve. We're going to explore the sand dune system. We're going to find out how it was created. We're going to be looking at the embryo dunes at the back of the beach and then carrying on into the sand dunes. Sand dunes are created when the sand gets blown in and hits an obstacle. It starts to accumulate on top of that to create a little mound of sand. Now, along with the sand, you get some seeds that also start to grow in that bit of sand. But as that sand is not holding on to water very easily, and also there's no nutrients, most of those plants die. When they die and decompose, they create a thin layer of organic matter which allows more seeds to start growing, and eventually we create these embryo dunes. Now, the species that live in embryo dunes have to be highly specialised to be able to survive with low levels of water and hardly any nutrients. And also it's very hot and sandy here. So they have to be able to survive when there's hardly any water, so we say they're xerophytes, a bit like the ones you find in deserts. We also have halophytes that can survive salt water, because on a high spring tide they can get sprayed with salt water as well. Now, as that starts to accumulate into a larger sand dune, we start to create our yellow dunes. Now, these are called yellow dunes because the sand is still very obvious and still quite yellow. There's hardly any organic matter and the species are still very specialised. The sand is moving, so it's very unstable, so they need to be able to survive without being covered in sand or be able to grow through it. We've got a very important species that we'll look at that has brilliant adaptations to survive in the yellow dunes. Beyond that, you have even bigger dunes, which are our grey dunes, and they're grey because we have this added organic matter. And these are less specialist species that can survive here. And beyond that, the dunes start to flatten, and we have our flat areas, which is called the dune grassland. And you might see some species there that you recognise in your garden. At the very end of the succession, we end up with our climatic climax, and that's a woodland. And within that, although we have our layer of sand underneath, we have a nice, organic, rich, nutrient-rich soil and lots of trees growing there. One of the most dominant and the most important species of plant in the yellow dunes is the marram grass. Now you can see it's all over these dunes, but in fact it is helping to build them and keep them here. It's perfectly adapted to live in these conditions. Because it's got such long roots, it can actually reach the water table way down at the bottom of the sand dunes. It also helps to anchor itself and it stops the sand from blowing away, so it really is a builder. In terms of its actual body, it actually is designed to try and stop the water from evaporating out of it. If you look closely at its stem, then it's actually rolled up. And you can undo that rolling up and turn it into a flat leaf and have a look on the inside of the leaf. Now, the inside of that leaf is full of grooves, and those grooves also help to stop the evaporation of water. The grooves, if you look with a microscope, you can see that the tiny stomata where the water evaporates out are also inside little pits. So it means that this tube of grass is maintaining a high level of humidity, so it reduces the rate of evapotranspiration, so this is always maintaining a wet layer on the inside. This means it's sucking up less water and it's less likely to dry out, even if it hasn't rained for a long time. If you come to the sand dunes in early summer, then you'll see the bird's foot trefoil in flower. It's a beautiful yellow and orange flower with touches of red. It's named after its leaves, which look like the foot of a bird, and its flower is a lovely pea flower which is perfectly adapted for pollination. The most beautiful flowers that you'll be very lucky to see on the sand dunes are our orchids. And we've got different ones at different times of year, but June is the best time to come and see them. So we've got our early purple orchid, so this is the first orchid you'll see with these beautiful purple flowers all the way down the top of the stem. In the yellow dunes, you might see these large swathes of yellow flowers as well. This is the kidney vetch, and it goes a bit orangey, and it's easy to distinguish from the bird's foot trefoil because it's quite a lot bigger and it's got this fluffiness there. It also is the food plant to the small blue butterfly. And here I've got a male and a female blue butterfly. So they only feed on this plant, so it's vitally important for them. So if you come here during June, you'll probably see these flying around, feeding on the nectar inside the flowers and also mating as well. If you get peckish on the dunes during the summer, you might be able to find some wild strawberries. Now, these tiny little strawberries don't grow any bigger. They don't grow as big as the cultivated strawberries you buy from the supermarket, but they're super sweet and they're absolutely gorgeous. Now, these strawberries are happening in the June, but later on in the year, just before autumn, you might also find some other berries. Now, these runners here, which will probably trip you up as you're walking along the dunes, are going to be connected to the leaves of the dewberry plant. And at the moment, we haven't even got the flowers out, but these look very much like blackberries when they're in berry, but they're much darker and they've got a tinge of grey. But they're really super sweet. They're a bit smaller than blackberries, but you can do everything you can with blackberries. So they're a lovely thing to eat in autumn, and then your small wild strawberries in June. Beyond the yellow dunes, we have our grey dunes, these large towering dunes where the sand is turned slightly brown or grey because of the humus content. And then beyond it, we have our dune meadow. Now, this grassland contains lots of species you might recognise from your garden. We've got some dewberries like we had before, some wild strawberries. We've also got bracken, but we'll have clover, daisies and buttercups, and lots of other grasses that you'll probably find in your garden as well. Beyond the dune grassland, we have our climatic climax, our woodland. And this woodland is an oak ash woodland, which is the climatic habitat for all of the environments in this environment. However, we've got a weird thing going on in ours because we've got some artificial man-made lakes there, which make this a very wet woodland. But that's not where we're going to stop. We're going to carry on and see those artificial man-made environments. We're going to visit our freshwater marsh and our reed bed. So here we are at the back of the dunes in the woodland. So this is the end of the sand dune system. Now, if you want to learn more about trees, then why not watch our Gower Society video all about trees? In contrast to the really dry environment in the sand dunes, we've got these artificial ponds that were created by the Penrice estate behind and inside the woodland. And these are home to some fantastic species of marsh plants. Now, this is flag iris, which again is perfectly adapted for pollination. So the bees come along and they land on this platform. And when they land on it, it pulls down. And then inside we have our anther, which then rubs pollen on the back of our bee while it pushes past it and puts its long tongue, its proboscis, into the nectar, which is all the way down here, and then reverses back out, flies to another plant and cross-pollinates with that one. Now, this reed bed is named after the common plant here, which is dominant, which is called the common reed. Now, this is what they use to thatch cottages, and because it's hollow, it keeps in all the heat and also it's waterproof. So you need masses of this to actually thatch a roof. But you can also use it for weaving. You use it to make mats and you can use it to make carpets as well. This freshwater marsh may look solid, but in fact there is actually a pond underneath here. And the only thing that turns it from a pond into a freshwater marsh is this plant here. This is sphagnum moss. And this is an amazing plant because it doesn't need soil to survive. It floats on top of the water and it gets all the nutrients it needs from the rain. But when the rain gives it its nutrients, it doesn't just take, it swaps. And it swaps by adding acid to the environment around it. So it means that any other plant that lives here has to survive in an acid environment. And this is a really good sponge. It holds up to 25 times its own weight in water. And that means that the freshwater marsh is always wet, even when it hasn't rained at all. But if you wander into the freshwater marsh, you might find some solid bits, but you might suddenly find that you're just standing on a few bits of floating sphagnum moss, and that can open up and you can fall into the pond underneath. So it's a very dangerous place to explore, so stay on the boardwalk. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this latest Gower Society Youth video about Oxwich Sand Dune System. And if you'd like to know about more habitats on Gower, look at all the other videos that we've got. And don't forget to come and visit us on our activities every month all over Gower so you can do some fun activities with your family. And I hope to see you there soon.